Have you ever wondered why, despite trying so hard, true success seems to slip through your fingers? I'm not talking about the noisy success, full of applause and visible achievements. I'm talking about the silent success, the kind that fills your soul, that brings peace to your chest, that awakens your gaze in the morning with a clear purpose. Most people are exhausted. They live stuck with goals they no longer recognize, driven by a routine where effort is constant, but meaning is absent. They do everything they say is right. They wake up early, plan their day, follow productivity methods, consume personal development content, but inside, they remain empty, and deep down, they are ashamed to admit none of this seems to be working. This is where one of the greatest confusions of the modern mind begins. We believe that discipline is the same as purpose, that completing tasks is the same as living with soul, that being productive is the same as being aligned. But there is a huge difference between moving a lot and moving in the right direction. And that is why, even with all this dedication, so many people still feel lost, because productivity without purpose is just a sophisticated form of stagnation. It is walking in circles with a mask of efficiency. It is running in a hurry, but without direction. And no one can live like that for long without getting sick inside. Napoleon Hill understood this long before the gurus and coaches were in vogue. He was talking about something deeper, something that cannot be contained in spreadsheets or schedules. Hill wrote about definite purpose with burning faith, words that seem simple, but carry a spiritual and vibrational power capable of changing destinies. Because wanting is easy, but wanting with clarity, with emotional conviction, with vibrational alignment, that is rare, that is revolutionary, that is the bridge between wanting something and becoming someone capable of receiving it. Few have understood the depth of what he meant. Many have read the book. Few have lived it, because living what Napoleon Hill taught requires much more than discipline. It requires emotional courage. It requires vibrational honesty. It requires you to stop hiding behind strategies and start asking yourself, what do I really want? And why haven't I become that desire yet? Clement Stone, Hill's partner and part author of this philosophy, brings another fundamental pillar, a positive mental attitude. But not in the superficial sense of think positive. No, he talks about an active emotional frequency, an internal posture that emits intention, that generates a field, that creates reality. A positive mental attitude is not about denying pain. It's about vibrating purpose even in the face of it. It's the ignition point of the mental creative power. When combined with a burning purpose, it turns into spiritual fuel. And perhaps it all starts with this phrase that will accompany you throughout this entire video. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you have become emotionally coherent in vibrating. Reflect deeply on this, because as long as there is incoherence between what you want and what you vibrate, between what you dream and what you feel, manifestation will continue to be blocked. Life does not respond to loose requests. It responds to the consolidated vibration. But then a painful question arises. Why can't 98% of people who read, think, and grow rich truly apply what's in it? The answer is not in the complexity of the book. It is in the emotional complexity of the human being. Because it's not enough to understand intellectually. You need to reprogram vibrationally, and that's what we're going to do together here. This video is a dive, a journey of realignment. An invitation for you to stop looking for magic formulas and start observing what's silently vibrating inside you. It's a call to consciousness, but also to compassion, because transforming yourself doesn't mean demanding more of yourself. It means listening more deeply to what you've been avoiding feeling. Now, calmly, with presence, with truth, let's walk towards the first lesson, and maybe you'll recognize yourself in it. Maybe you'll see, for the first time, the invisible root of your anxiety. Because yes, desire without direction creates a powerful illusion, but it also opens the door to the greatest vibrational healing of your life. Let's go together. Desire without direction creates anxiety disguised as ambition. There is a type of restlessness that dresses itself in strength, but is born of need. An accelerated, noisy desire that confuses intensity with purpose. It is that urgency to change your life, to achieve something great, to prove to yourself and to others that it is possible to succeed. But behind this mental and emotional rush, there is often a soul without direction, a soul that desires a lot but does not know where it is going, not because it lacks strength, but because there is still no vibrational clarity about what is true. And when desire is not born of clarity, it is born of comparison. You look outside and see others achieving. You see friends growing up. You see people shopping, traveling, smiling for the cameras. And without realizing it, you begin to desire what is not yours. You begin to chase goals that do not belong to your soul. This is desire without direction. It seems like ambition, but it is anxiety. It seems like a dream, but it is noise. And the problem is not desire. Desire is natural. It is human. It is divine. The problem is to desire without knowing why you desire it. Without knowing what that desire represents in your emotional field, this anxiety disguised as ambition generates vibrational turbulence. It disorganizes the field. It weakens magnetism because the universe does not respond to shouts. It responds to silent coherence, to that calm, constant vibration, deeply rooted in a defined emotional purpose. Without this, desire becomes quicksand. The more you try to force it, the deeper you sink. The more you try to accelerate, the more you disconnect from the true path. Napoleon Hill said that all success begins with a burning desire, but this desire needs to be imbued with direction. It needs to be united with a why that comes from the soul and not from the ego. Because when desire comes from the ego, it asks for applause. When it comes from the soul, it asks for truth. And that is the difference between a desire that makes you sick and a desire that transforms you. Many people feel frustrated because they think they are not desiring strongly enough. But the problem is not strength, it is direction. This is the vibrational origin of desire. When it is born from the fear of being left behind, it vibrates scarcity. When it is born from the need for validation, it vibrates insecurity. But when it is born from a defined emotional purpose, it vibrates magnetism. It attracts. It organizes. It aligns. The first step is not to desire more. It is to desire with awareness. It is to look within and ask, does this desire expand me or exhaust me? Does it inspire me or pressure me? Is it mine? Or is it a reflection of the pain of not feeling enough? When you answer this honestly, everything changes. Anxiety gives way to clarity. Ambition transforms into direction, and the vibrational field begins to breathe truth. Faith is not a passive belief. It is a non-negotiable, emotional decision. There is a great illusion spread around that having faith is simply believing, repeating to yourself that everything will work out, placing hope in the future, like someone who deposits coins in a fountain. But this faith, based only on loose words and superficial positive thoughts, does not sustain true transformation, because real faith does not live in the mind. It lives in the body, in vibration, in the emotional decision that admits no alternative. The faith that moves realities is not the one that waits. It is the one that affirms, even without seeing, even without guarantees. Even in silence, it vibrates. This is already mine. The subconscious mind does not respond to logic. It responds to emotional energy. You can repeat a phrase 1,000 times, but if your emotional field vibrates with doubt, fear, or need, it is this vibration that will be heard. Faith is an internal state, a vibrational climate, a deep decision that settles in the body and changes your stance on life. You do not need to convince anyone when you have faith, because true faith changes the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you act. It becomes your presence, and that is where so many people get lost. They confuse faith with hope, but hope waits. Faith takes a stand. Faith moves. Faith decides. And it is this emotional decision that communicates to the universe. I already am this. I am not trying. I am not testing. I am embodying this reality. I am becoming the vibration that matches what I desire. And when that decision is non-negotiable, when it is not dependent on what is happening around me, the field begins to reorder itself. Napoleon Hill understood this clearly. For him, faith was not a religion. It was vibrational science. It was alignment. It was the power to emotionally impregnate oneself with the certainty of what has not yet manifested. He said that faith is born from repetition, but not from mechanical repetition. It is repetition with emotion, with presence, with decision. Repeating words without vibrating what they say is like lighting an unlit candle. There is no heat. There is no light. You must have experienced this at some point in your life. That phase in which everything seemed uncertain, but there was an inexplicable inner certainty. A silent voice saying, "Keep going." This is living faith. The faith that vibrates beyond circumstances. The faith that does not depend on external proof because it has already become an internal frequency. When you access this state, there is no more struggle. There is surrender. There is trust. There is presence. The practical faith that transforms lives is the one that translates into emotional posture. It is not saying that you believe. It is acting like someone who already is. It is thinking, choosing, walking like someone who no longer negotiates with doubt, who has already decided to vibrate the new, because this decision vibrates like a command in the quantum field. And the universe, silently, begins to respond. Repeating affirmations without aligning emotions creates resistance. Many believe that simply repeating a positive phrase several times a day is enough for it to become reality, as if words in themselves were magic. But the subconscious mind is not convinced by mechanical repetition. It responds to what is felt. And when there is a distance between what is said and what is felt, this incoherence creates invisible blocks. Repetition without emotion becomes noise, and this noise, over time, feeds resistance instead of manifestation. Neville Goddard called this imagination without emotional impregnation, visualizing something desired, affirming a new reality, but continuing to vibrate doubt, fear, or frustration. It is like placing a seed in the soil and watering it with contaminated water. The seed may be good, the intention may be true, but if the emotional vibration is not clean, growth will be compromised, because the soil of manifestation is emotion. Repetition only has power when it carries vibrational truth. Many people don't realize how much it affects their lives. They wake up, make their affirmations, create their vision boards, but spend the whole day feeling scarcity, worry, and rush. They say, "I am prosperous," but feel anxious about paying a bill. They say, "I am healthy," but feel fearful of their body. They say, "I am loved," but feel insecure. And there is no affirmation in the world that can replace the real vibration that is being emitted at each moment. This does not mean that words have no power. They do, but only when they are aligned with what is felt in the heart. The electromagnetic field of the heart is much more powerful than that of the mind. That is where manifestation happens. It is not what you say. It is what you vibrate. It is not what you repeat. It is what you truly feel. When an affirmation becomes a sensation, it comes to life. When it becomes part of the body, of the breathing, of the posture, it begins to create reality. We need to get out of automatic mode. Don't repeat for the sake of repeating, but immerse yourself in the affirmation as if you were immersing yourself in a state of being. Close your eyes, feel, breathe. Inhabit the emotion of what you desire. Let your body vibrate that phrase as an internal truth and not as an external attempt. Repetition with emotion is a silent prayer. It is an energetic dance with the universe, and when this dance is done coherently, the answer comes, without effort, without resistance, just as a reflection of the vibration that has finally aligned with what has always been yours. The hidden blockage of the logical mind, excess of reason, lack of vibration. Logic is a powerful ally, but when it dominates the internal field, it becomes an invisible prison. The logical mind wants to understand. It wants to control. It wants to have guarantees before allowing the next step. But manifestation, conscious creation, does not happen under the dominion of control. It demands surrender. It demands space. It asks something inside us to trust without knowing, to feel without explaining, to desire without needing to prove. And that is exactly where many get blocked, because they have learned to trust only what is visible, measurable, and rational. The logical mind operates in the known. It seeks patterns, repetitions, and external validations. But what you want to manifest does not yet exist on the visible plane. It is in the subtle, vibrational, intuitive realm. It is a space that cannot be proven. It is felt. And when logic tries to dominate this space, the flow is interrupted. Excessive analysis creates stagnation. Excessive emotional vigilance creates distrust. And without trust, energy does not flow. It gets stuck. It recedes. How many times have you felt something true, but aborted the feeling because it didn't make sense? How many times have you had a clear intuition, a spontaneous impulse, but let logic invalidate it with doubts, fears, or arguments? And how many times, later on, have you realized that you should have trusted that first feeling? The wisdom of the field is not in the rational mind. It lives in the body, in the heart, in the subtle frequency that precedes reason. And when we listen only to reason, we disconnect from this intelligence. Napoleon Hill spoke of the importance of faith, imagination, and emotion as key elements in the creation of a reality. But this requires giving up, for a moment, the control of logic. Not to reject it, but to put it in its place. Logic must serve the spirit, and not the other way around. When it becomes the master, everything becomes calculation. And calculation, no matter how precise it may seem, will never be able to measure the power of an aligned vibration. You can plan every step, study every strategy, but if there is no coherent emotional frequency, nothing flourishes fully. Logic alone builds walls. Coherent vibration builds pathways. And sometimes, the greatest quantum leap someone can take is not learning something new. It is allowing yourself to feel something old, with new depth. It is trusting the invisible. It is letting your mind rest, so that your heart can lead. When this happens, the blockage dissolves. The field opens up, and the impossible begins to seem natural. How dopamine addicts you to goals that don't belong to you. We live in an era where goals are displayed like trophies, where achievements are announced as if they defined someone's worth. Social networks have turned desires into showcases. You see other people's success in real time, every day, and without realizing it, you begin to desire what is not yours. You begin to run after goals that were not born from your soul, but from your comparison. This is the new invisible addiction. Dopamine generated by the expectation of validation, a cycle that stimulates the brain but empties the spirit. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of desire. It drives us, motivates us, moves us towards rewards. But when it is triggered by goals that have no authentic emotional connection, it creates a void, an impulse without roots. You move, yes. You act, yes. But you don't feel fulfilled. Because what moves you is not true. It is emotional urgency in disguise. It is a desire that was born from absence, not from essence. Neuroscience shows how the brain's reward system can be hijacked by the repetition of visual, auditory, and social stimuli. Every like, every compliment, every shared achievement activates this system. But the soul does not respond to dopamine. It responds to coherence. And when there is a mismatch between what the brain wants and what the heart needs, exhaustion sets in. The famous feeling of always running but never arriving, of conquering and yet feeling empty. Napoleon Hill did not write about dopamine, but he did write about sincere desire, defined purpose, and ardent faith. And this, in practice, is the antidote. When desire comes from the soul, there is no rush, there is no comparison, there is no addiction to the external, there is direction, there is serenity, there is a silent magnetism that does not need to prove anything to anyone. This true desire does not need to be ignited all the time. It already carries its own flame. It does not tire. It does not disperse. It does not sabotage itself. Asking yourself, is this goal really mine, is an act of liberation. It is a rediscovery, because many of your current goals may have been inherited, copied, imposed. And as long as you chase goals that do not vibrate with your essence, you will continue to feel an inexplicable discomfort, because the body feels it, the field feels it, and vibration does not lie. When you align your desire with your truth, dopamine transforms into emotional direction, and finally, the search becomes a path. And the path begins to nourish, not just tire. The myth of productivity without identity. Who do you act like? In a world where doing is more valued than being, identity ends up being diluted in the rush. People become to-do lists, busy schedules, monthly goals, and little by little, they lose touch with who they really are. They become efficient characters, but spiritually empty. They execute, deliver, produce, but they don't recognize themselves in what they are creating. They act like conditioned versions, trained to please, win, survive. But they rarely stop to ask, who is acting here? Who am I when no one is watching? This is the myth of productivity, the idea that the more you do, the more valuable you become. But productivity without identity is just repetition. It is activity without consciousness. It is action without presence. And this, sooner or later, makes the soul sick. Because doing that does not come from being, creates disconnection. It creates noise. It creates fatigue. And the body feels it. The mind feels it. Life starts to get heavy. Even with so many accomplishments, something remains incomplete. Psychology calls this the Galatea effect, a phenomenon where you manifest what you believe you deserve. But the big question is, where does this belief come from? Who defined what you deserve? Was it you? Or were external voices that shaped your self-image? Because if your identity is trapped in beliefs of scarcity, insufficiency, or fear, your productivity will only reinforce this prison. You will continue to act, yes, but acting like who? Like someone trying to prove their worth. Like someone running away from themselves. Like someone who needs to show results to feel worthy. Real manifestation does not begin with action. It begins with identity. You do not attract what you do. You attract what you are. And when you truly become the frequency of what you desire, actions become coherent. Choices align. Productivity ceases to be pressure and becomes expression. Expression of your being, of your essence, of your vibrational truth. It is no longer about doing to achieve. It is about doing to manifest what you are already becoming. This turning point requires courage. Courage to look in the mirror and ask, who am I becoming with these choices? Who am I feeding with these goals? Am I acting like someone who believes in themselves, or like someone who still carries doubts from the past? When you realign your identity with your essence, productivity gains soul. And everything you create begins to carry your light, your frequency, your presence. This is manifestation with consciousness. This is living with purpose. The trauma of past failure silences your frequency of worthiness. There are pains that do not scream, that do not cry, that are not shown in public, but that vibrate silently within those who carry the weight of having tried and failed. Past failures, unresolved, turn into shadows that follow the person even in moments of light. And the most subtle thing about this pain is that it does not just paralyze actions. It sabotages worthiness. It sabotages the internal permission to receive, to prosper, to live in peace with success. The heart that has already been broken by a profound failure begins to emit an invisible signal. I no longer trust myself. And even when the person tries again, even when they make an effort, even when they feign optimism, the vibration of fear is still present. And the universe feels it. Because the electromagnetic field of the heart does not lie. It records unhealed pain. It carries the echo of poorly digested disappointments, and this echo is often what prevents the manifestation from flowing. Napoleon Hill spoke of the importance of persistence, but true persistence is not repeating actions. It is restoring the frequency. It is healing the emotion that was trapped in the past. Because as long as you carry guilt, shame, or self-deprecation for having failed before, your vibration of worthiness will be compromised. And this is not a punishment. It is a reflex. The universe does not block. It reflects. It responds to what you vibrate as truth. And if your inner truth still carries the weight of, "I am not good enough," this will be the invisible limit of your reality. You need to recognize the pain that remains. Not to hold on to it, but to embrace it, to transform it. Failure only becomes wisdom when it is looked at with compassion, when it is integrated, when you understand that it does not diminish you, it reveals you. Because failure is not an end. It is a mirror that shows you what you believed about yourself and what you still need to realign in order to move forward. Healing the trauma of failure means reopening the doors of worthiness. It means telling yourself, "I am still worthy, even with everything I have experienced." It means trusting again, not because there are guarantees, but because now there is emotional maturity, there is presence, there is vibrational integrity. And when this confidence begins to be reborn, the field expands again. Worthiness ceases to be a concept and becomes a presence, a living vibration, silent, but powerful enough to change everything. Transmit before asking. Vibration comes before action. There is a silent order that governs the flow of manifestation, an order that is not written in traditional productivity books, nor taught in conventional success goals. It is a vibrational wisdom, often ignored. Everything begins with a mission. You do not reap what you asked for. You reap what you transmitted before asking. The universal field is not receptive to empty intentions. It responds to coherence. It responds to the vibration that precedes action. Most people reverse this order. First they act. First they demand. First they make demands. Then they try to vibrate gratitude. Then they try to align the field. But the energy field does not respond to the subsequent effort. It responds to the previous frequency. What you emit when no one is watching. What you feel when you imagine what you want. What vibrates in the silence of your heart. That is where everything begins. And if this vibration is misaligned, the action becomes noise. The manifestation is distant. That is why so many attempts generate frustration, because the person starts moving without being whole, acts without being present, speaks without feeling, and the universe, instead of responding to the request, responds to the disorder, responds to the unspoken doubt, responds to the emotional tension that contaminates the request, and the manifestation retracts, not as punishment, but out of vibrational coherence. The field does not lie, it mirrors. To transmit before asking is to live in a state of conscious emission. It is to make your body a vibrational channel of what you want. It is to allow your frequency to communicate to the universe. I am already becoming this. This does not mean acting as if everything is resolved. It means acting with the vibration of someone who already trusts, someone who recognizes the seed before the flower, someone who already feels gratitude before the harvest. 5 minutes a day of emotional coherence have more power than hours of disconnected action. And this coherence can be cultivated with presence, with silence, with a simple gesture of deep emotional visualization. It is not enough to imagine what you want. You need to feel what it would be like to be there. You need to let your body experience, even if only for a few seconds, the vibration of already being. Because this feeling is the language of manifestation. Napoleon Hill called this applied faith, and other masters called it vibrational surrender. But the principle is the same. Action, when born from the right frequency, creates realities lightly, without forcing, without pressuring, only as a natural reflection of what is already being transmitted with truth. When vibration precedes action, life begins to respond, not by miracle, but by coherence, by resonance, by alignment. What Napoleon Hill meant by autosuggestion, a word that at first glance seems technical, but in fact, it hides one of the most profound tools for transforming reality from the inside out. When Napoleon Hill used this term in Think and Grow Rich, he was not referring to simple motivational phrases or ready-made phrases said in the mirror. He was talking about a vibrational process, a silent dialogue with the unconscious, a reprogramming that happens not through the force of reason, but through the emotional constancy of intention. Autosuggestion is the act of repeatedly planting an emotional image in the fertile soil of the subconscious mind, but not just any image, an image loaded with meaning, with intention, with coherent emotion, because the subconscious does not understand words the way the logical mind does. It understands symbols, frequencies, emotional states. It responds to the vibration behind what is said. And so, repeating phrases without presence, without sensory involvement, does not transform anything. It only reinforces the distance between what is desired and what is felt. Autosuggestion works when repetition meets feeling, when the spoken phrase transforms into a state of being, when the mind begins to convince itself, not by force, but by familiarity. The subconscious is shaped by what is repeated with emotion. It does not judge, it absorbs. It is impressed by internal images that return constantly. It is like sculpting a new, vibrational identity, with patience, with presence, with truth. And this requires more than technique. It requires intention. It is not about repeating what you want. It is about becoming what you want. It is about using the symbolic language of the soul, feeling the phrase, visualizing it deeply, inhabiting, even for a few seconds, the internal reality of what is being suggested. When this happens, the internal field begins to reorganize itself. The subconscious mind begins to operate from a new frequency, and external reality, as a reflection, begins to move. Napoleon Hill understood that the human mind is malleable, but it only transforms when emotion joins repetition, when autosuggestion is done as a ritual of realignment, an intimate encounter with the highest version of yourself, a silent conversation between what you are and what you are becoming. When done like this, with truth and consistency, autosuggestion ceases to be a technique and becomes a vibrational field that silently shapes your new reality. Beware of the obsession with manifesting. Desperation vibrates scarcity. The line between desire and desperation is thin. Sometimes you think you are focused, committed, determined to manifest something, but deep down, you are vibrating urgency, scarcity, lack of control, and the universe does not respond to what you desire. It responds to what you vibrate. The obsession with manifesting is often a disguised attempt to escape from a deeper pain, the pain of not feeling complete now, of not feeling safe here, of not feeling whole without what you desire. When desire becomes fixation, it becomes contaminated. It loses its lightness. It loses its fluidity. It starts to vibrate with need, fear, lack, and this vibration creates resistance. It creates blockage. Because energetically, despair is a cry of, "I still don't have it." And this cry echoes in the field as a confirmation of absence. Manifestation does not happen at the frequency of urgency. It happens at the frequency of trust, of surrender, of the serenity of someone who is already at peace with what is while aligning with what is to come. Napoleon Hill taught that desire must be ardent, but this ardor is not haste. It is not anxiety. It is conviction. It is constancy. It is an internal flame that burns in silence without the need to prove, shout, or beg. True desire does not demand. It emits. It vibrates. It becomes a field. And it is in this field that manifestation materializes, not as a response to effort, but as a mirror of the vibration that remained coherent, even when nothing around it had changed. When you become obsessed with a result, you begin to distrust time, distrust the process, distrust yourself. And this distrust is what vibrates the strongest. This is what the universe captures. Vibration does not lie. And when it is contaminated by haste, the flow closes. What was supposed to arrive lightly begins to move away, not out of malice, but out of resonance. Letting go of obsession is not giving up. It is trusting. It is vibrating presence. It is cultivating desire with respect, but without dependence. It is taking care of your frequency as if it were the soil where the new will flourish. And the soil needs calm, silence, time, Manifesting is not running after it. It is aligning yourself with what is already approaching. And this alignment only happens when desperation gives way to the calm vibration of those who have already understood what is yours is already on its way. And it arrives when you stop begging and start to incarnate the hidden logic of practical faith, what few understood from Hill's teaching. When Napoleon Hill spoke about faith, he was not referring to blind belief or fragile hope. He was pointing to something that few understand in depth. Practical faith, a faith that translates into decisions, that manifests itself in posture, that breathes through daily actions, even when there is still no visible sign of what is expected. It is not just a mental faith, it is a vibrational faith, a bodily faith, a faith that moves. Most people think of faith as something passive, a state of waiting, but true faith is active. It makes decisions before evidence. It chooses to act even in the absence of guarantees. It is nourished by the conviction that by remaining faithful to the desired vibration, reality will inevitably align itself. This is the faith that builds, the faith that opens paths where there were once walls, the faith that vibrates so firmly that the surrounding field begins to reorganize everything to respond to the new frequency. And here comes the hidden logic that Napoleon Hill understood. The secret is not just in wanting it badly enough. It is in acting coherently, in sustaining the vibration of what is desired, while taking steps towards the new. It is not about waiting around, nor about acting desperately. It is about walking in tune with the vibration of what is already felt as real, even if it has not yet materialized. This practical faith involves emotional repetition with action, a powerful combination that shapes the subconscious and trains the field to recognize the new frequency as natural. Repeating with emotion, acting with intention, maintaining the vibration even in the face of external silence. This is the journey of those who understand that faith is not a request. It is an answer. It is a way of existing. It is a non-negotiable choice to continue vibrating the new until the new stops being a dream and becomes presence. When this faith becomes a lifestyle, doubt loses strength, fear loses ground, and manifestation begins to emerge as a consequence, not as an effort, because the field responds to coherence. And coherence is born from faith that does not waver in the face of each challenge. It is born from vibrational fidelity to what is not yet seen, but already felt. And that is what makes practical faith so powerful. It does not wait to believe, it believes. And that is why it manifests. Why you can study all the books and still live in scarcity. There is a silent frustration that affects many sincere seekers. People who read, study, watch, take notes, dedicate themselves. They absorb concepts, accumulate information, follow masters, and immerse themselves in transformative content. And yet, they continue to live in patterns of scarcity, financial, emotional, relational scarcity. And this does not happen for lack of effort. It happens for a more subtle, deeper reason. Knowledge that is not vibrated does not become reality. The mind can know, the body can repeat. But if the emotional field does not align, nothing blossoms with truth. Because scarcity does not live in the pocket. It lives in the frequency. It is a vibration impregnated with distrust, fear, attachment, urgency. And this vibration can continue to live, even after you understand everything intellectually about abundance. Rational knowledge does not dissolve emotional beliefs. And until these beliefs are transformed, reality continues to repeat the same patterns. You may have memorized all the laws of manifestation. You may understand quantum physics, know the words of Napoleon Hill, study the teachings of Neville Goddard, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Florence Scovel Shinn. But if within you there is still an unconscious feeling of unworthiness, inadequacy, insecurity, that will be the vibration that commands your field. And the universe will silently continue to reflect it back. This is the big turning point. Recognizing that the path is not to accumulate more content. It is to integrate what you already know. It is to feel what you have learned. It is to transform knowledge into being. Because knowledge that does not transform into vibration becomes just another form of control, an elegant disguise to continue avoiding feeling what really needs to be healed. And healing only happens when the heart enters the journey, when emotion opens, when the body finally becomes a conscious channel of the new frequency. Scarcity dissolves when deservingness sets in, and deservingness does not come from outside. It does not come from how many books you have read. It is born from the moment you truly feel that you are enough, that you are worthy, that you are ready to receive. And this feeling changes everything because it alters the field. It repositions your presence in the universe. And it is from this new vibration that knowledge becomes reality, that wisdom is embodied, and that finally, abundance ceases to be a concept and becomes a living experience. The energetic error of trying to control divine timing. There is a hidden pain in those who are on the path of manifestation, waiting for the signal, waiting for the return, waiting for the result. And the more you wait, the more restlessness, doubt, and fear grow that perhaps nothing will happen. That is when the impulse to control arises, to try to speed up the process, to force doors, to want to decide the time. But divine timing does not bow to anxiety. It aligns with vibration. And when you try to control time, you are telling the universe that you do not trust the flow, that you still believe you are alone. This attempt at control, even if silent, vibrates resistance, vibrates distrust, vibrates scarcity, and everything that is controlled too much loses life. The energy of creation demands space. It demands faith. It demands a trust that is not blind but vibrational. Divine timing does not follow the human clock. It follows the vibrational coherence of your field. When you are ready, what is yours arrives. But ready does not mean deserving in theory. It means vibrating as if it already is. It means acting, deciding, breathing as if you were already where you want to be. Haste, disguised as focus, is one of the most common traps on the spiritual journey. You say you are committed, but inside, you are restless, you are anxious, you are impatient. And this impatience is a type of subtle denial, a non-acceptance of the present. And all non-acceptance vibrates disconnection, vibrates separation, vibrates scarcity. Divine timing, on the other hand, vibrates union. It manifests itself when you stop pushing life and start walking with it. Napoleon Hill spoke of the importance of persistence, but this persistence is not rigidity. It is gentle firmness. It is constant presence. It is the act of continuing to vibrate with clarity, even when the results have not yet appeared. It is the type of faith that does not negotiate with the clock, that understands that life has its rhythm, that understands that the invisible is working, even in the silence, even in the pause, even when it seems like nothing is moving. And paradoxically, it is when you let go that things begin to flow, because letting go is not giving up, it is trusting. It means stopping to block with your tension what is already trying to arrive. It means allowing the field to organize itself, allowing time to reveal itself, allowing the process to complete its cycle. Controlling time is acting like someone who doubts. Trusting in divine timing is acting like someone who already knows. And this vibration is what changes everything, because the right time is not when you want it. It is when you are vibrating what you are truly ready to receive. The businessman who only prospered after understanding active detachment. He tried everything: courses, mentoring, methods, goals. He planned his days with discipline. He acted with focus. He studied the masters of prosperity. But no matter how hard he tried, the results did not come. It was as if something invisible was blocking the flow, as if there was a barrier between him and the abundance he so sought. And this barrier was not outside, it was inside. It was the silent attachment to control, the unconscious need to guarantee, to predict, to be certain. He did everything right, but he vibrated with fear. What he did not realize is that even with all his dedication, there was an energy of resistance in his vibration, an emotional tension hidden behind organization, an attachment disguised as commitment. He said he trusted, but inside, he was holding on too tightly. and everything that is held on with fear does not flow. The energy of manifestation requires space, and space only exists when there is detachment, not a cold, negligent detachment, but an active detachment, conscious, loving, a state of surrender without neglect, of presence without control. The turning point came when he understood that he didn't need to stop acting, but he needed to stop suffocating reality with his anxiety. He began to practice vibrational surrender, to trust in the steps taken without demanding that each one of them already bring a response. He began to act lightly, to breathe in the middle of the path, to celebrate before the result. He didn't stop desiring, but he stopped demanding. He didn't stop acting, but he stopped demanding of himself for every detail. And it was in this space that the flow began. Business began to unblock. Money began to arrive. The right connections appeared, not as a sudden miracle, but as a reflection of the internal change. The field had reorganized itself. The vibration was more fluid, more confident, more available. He stopped trying to control time and began to vibrate as someone who was already ready for what he wanted to receive. And the universe, silently, responded. This is what active detachment is all about. It's not abandoning your dream. It's letting go of rigidity. It's stopping suffocating the field with fear-filled expectations. It's trusting the seed you planted so much that you don't need to dig it up every day to see if it's growing. It's continuing to water it with faith, with presence, with gratitude, knowing that the flower will come at the right time, at the right pace. Because when you let go of control, what's yours finally finds space to bloom. What you tolerate emotionally, you feed energetically. We don't always realize what we're silently allowing. These are small internal concessions, thoughts that come back and aren't challenged, feelings that settle in and become routine. And what you allow emotionally, even without words, turns into energetic nourishment. The vibration that repeats itself becomes consolidated, and what consolidates begins to shape reality. It doesn't matter how much you say you want to prosper. If there's a frequency of self-abandonment within you, that will be the vibrational foundation of your life. Tolerance, in this context, is not just accepting something with resignation. It is maintaining emotional states that no longer reflect your highest truth. It is normalizing patterns of scarcity, justifying relationships that are draining, settling into routines that are draining, feeding thoughts that are weakening. All of this creates a subtle but powerful energetic network. The surrounding field captures and responds, not to what you desire, but to what you sustain, to what you repeat, to what you no longer confront. And behind this tolerance there is, almost always, a fear. Fear of not knowing what it will be like without it. Fear of not being able to achieve something better. Fear of not deserving it. So you get used to it. You survive, but you do not manifest. Because manifestation requires alignment, and alignment requires courage to interrupt patterns, to break with vibrations that no longer represent you, to say to yourself, firmly, I no longer feed that which drains me. Napoleon Hill spoke about the importance of controlling one's mental environment, but this control is not about rigidity, it is about presence. It is about listening to what you are vibrating throughout the day. It's about realizing what you're silently tolerating. It's about doing an energetic cleanse, clearing repetitive thoughts that sabotage you, recognizing feelings that are vibrating scarcity, and gently beginning to nurture new states. When you stop feeding what is holding you back, the field begins to expand, the energy reorganizes, the frequency changes, and your choices begin to reflect this new alignment. You start saying yes to what you used to avoid, and you start saying no to what you have always tolerated. This is the beginning of a new manifestation, not because something external has changed, but because internally you have stopped abandoning yourself, and you have silently decided to start vibrating your truth with presence, with firmness, with vibrational self-love. You plant a seed and dig it up every day to see if it is growing. This is one of the most powerful images of manifestation. Imagine a gardener who plants a seed with great care. He chooses the right soil. He waters it attentively. He trusts the invisible process of the earth. But the next day, when he doesn't see any sprouts, he digs it up. He checks to see if something is happening. And the next day, he does it again and again, until, without realizing it, he destroys the process he himself started. Anxiety has prevented him from harvesting. Mistrust suffocated growth. This is exactly what many do with their own dreams. They plant with intention, but dig up with doubt. They visualize with faith, but contaminate with impatience. They act with courage, but sabotage with fear. And all of this happens because they do not trust the invisible, because they have not yet learned to respect the silent time of the seeds, the time when nothing seems to happen, but everything is being prepared. Manifestation, like nature, has its cycles. It needs gestation. It needs silence. It needs a space where faith breathes. And this space only exists when there is surrender, when there is a gentle trust that sustains the desire, even in the absence of signs, when there is a stable vibration, even if the external world does not confirm anything. It is in this space that the seed grows, in silence, in depth, in truth. Napoleon Hill spoke about persistence, but the persistence that manifests is not made of anxiety disguised as focus. It is made of presence, of a faith that refuses to doubt every day what it has already decided to be true. Because every time you dig with distrust, you send a message of denial to the field, and the field listens. It notices the doubt and responds with silence, not as punishment, but as coherence. You only harvest when you stop interrupting the cycle, when you learn to trust while caring, when you learn to wait while vibrating, when you learn to maintain the vibration of yes, even in silence. Because manifestation is not magic. It is the vibrational consequence of a decision that has remained firm, even on cloudy days. When you trust, the invisible works for you, and what seemed to be at a standstill begins little by little to flourish, without warning, without fanfare, but with truth, with life, with vibrational coherence. How the saboteur identity disguises itself as realism. Often, what we call realism is just fear dressed up in fancy clothes, a sophisticated form of self-sabotage that presents itself as prudence, rationality, balance. But behind this measured discourse lies an old identity shaped by past traumas, limitations, and failures. This identity silently repeats, don't go too far, don't want too much, don't trust too much. It protects itself by arguing that it is just being realistic. But in reality, it is just vibrating restraint. The saboteur identity is clever. It doesn't present itself as fear. It presents itself as caution, as wisdom, as maturity. But if you look closely, you will notice that this voice is vibrating in disagreement with your new self, with what you want to manifest, with what you feel you are ready to live. And this dissonance creates noise in the field. Action says yes, but vibration still carries the no. And the universe, as always, responds to vibration. This is why so many people live divided. They say they want something new, but they continue to act from an old identity. They continue to make decisions based on who they were and not on who they are becoming. And this incoherence sabotages. Because manifestation does not recognize words. It recognizes frequency. And if your frequency is still stuck in the narrative of protection, prudence, survival, the flow of abundance remains blocked. Napoleon Hill said, "What the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But to truly believe, you have to give up the old identity. You have to stop being the one who doubts, the one who holds back, the one who justifies stagnation with rational arguments." And that hurts, because the old identity offers security, even if it is an uncomfortable security, even if it keeps you small. It is still known, familiar, but it is no longer true. When you start to align with a new version of yourself, the old one gets restless. It tries to sabotage. It tries to persuade. It tries to bring back the logic of be realistic. And it is at this moment that you need to make a firm choice to continue vibrating as you have always vibrated, or to commit to the new frequency even if it still seems bold, even if there are still no guarantees. because it is this internal commitment that dissolves the sabotage, that transforms the field, that truly begins the creation of a new reality, not based on what you were, but anchored in the vibrational identity of what you are ready to be, the vibrational structure of an irrevocable decision. There is a subtle but immense difference between wanting something and deciding for something. Wanting is common, deciding is rare, because a true decision is not made only with words. It is made with energy, with body, with field. When you make an irrevocable decision, something is reorganized inside and outside. You change your vibration. You communicate to the universe, not with promises, but with presence. The real decision is a vibrational signature that says, "I am not coming back from here." Most people live in reversible decisions. They say they will change, but they leave gaps. They say they will continue, but they maintain plan Bs. They say they will manifest, but they continue to vibrate uncertainty. And this uncertainty is perceived. It is in the micro choices, in the lack of firmness, in the absence of vibrational commitment. The field responds to clarity, and clarity is born of renunciation. From the decision to cut ties with everything that contradicts the new frequency. When Napoleon Hill spoke of defined purpose and burning desire, he was talking about this type of decision, not the mental, logical, conditioned decision, but a decision made with the totality of the being. When you say, "This is it," with your body, with your emotions, with your spirit, the universe listens, and it starts to move pieces that were stagnant. It starts to reorganize scenarios that seemed impossible, because your frequency has become non-negotiable. This vibrational structure is not born of rigidity. It is born of energetic maturity, from the understanding that, in order to manifest something new, you need to become new. And this renewal does not happen without firm decisions. Decisions that eliminate the old, that dissolve excuses, that interrupt the cycle of almost. Manifestation does not respond to the maybe. It responds to the absolute yes, to the vibrational commitment, to the total presence in that which one wishes to embody. And curiously, when you truly decide, you no longer feel anxiety, because anxiety lives in the realm of doubt. But true decision brings peace, even without immediate results, because there is no longer internal conflict. There is no longer division. There is only yes. And that yes is enough to move mountains, not because of noise, but because of frequency, because of firmness, because of the vibration of someone who has already become what they once only dreamed of. Visualization technique with deep emotional coherence. Visualization is not about imagining with the mind's eye. It is about feeling with the body of the soul. True visualization does not happen only in the mental field. It happens when the image created is accompanied by an authentic emotion, a bodily sensation, a vibration that spreads throughout the being. When you visualize with emotional coherence, you are not just thinking, you are experiencing. You are creating in real time a new energetic signature. And it is this signature that communicates to the field what is ready to be born. Most people visualize in a hurry, with anxiety. They close their eyes and project mental images, but the body is tense. The breathing is shallow. The vibration is absent. And without vibration, the image does not come to life. It remains as a distant desire. But when you combine visualization with sensation, everything changes. You breathe the future as if it were present. You feel the anticipated gratitude in your chest. You relax your body. You vibrate as if you were already living it. And in this state, the impossible begins to become probable. Napoleon Hill spoke about the importance of emotion, to imbue the subconscious mind with intensity. And coherent visualization is one of the most powerful ways to do this. It doesn't have to last long, but it has to be true. A minute of real presence is worth more than an hour of distraction. When you allow yourself to feel what you want, as if it were already real, the subconscious begins to accept this image as truth. It doesn't know how to distinguish between what is lived and what is experienced internally with emotional intensity. The key is gratitude. Feeling gratitude before it arrives is the highest form of vibrational faith. It is a silent declaration that you already trust, that you have already received, that you have already become, and the field responds to this with precision, not as a favor, but as a reflex. The vibration of gratitude is magnetic. It expands the heart field. It dissolves resistance. It makes room for the new. So when visualizing, don't force it. Breathe, feel, imagine with your heart. Bring the image, bring your body, bring the emotion, and allow yourself to remain in this state for a few minutes, silently, without expectations, just by feeling, because it is in this vibrational silence that reality begins to bend, and everything that seemed distant begins to approach with lightness, with truth, with coherence, not like magic, but as a consequence of a field that has finally become home to that which was once just a dream, subtle signs that you are vibrationally misaligned. Sometimes misalignment does not show itself in great tragedies or visible losses. It reveals itself in the details, in the small annoyances that repeat themselves, in the constant feeling of tiredness, even on seemingly light days, in the discouragement upon waking, in the difficulty of maintaining presence in conversations, in the emptiness that persists even after achievements. These are the signs that announce something in you is not in resonance with what you want. Something is out of balance. Something needs to be looked at more deeply. Vibrational misalignment is not a mistake. It is an invitation, a silent call to return to the center. But often, instead of listening, you try to compensate. You increase your effort. You multiply your goals. Run faster. But this rush only increases the distance. Because misalignment cannot be cured with unbridled action. It is cured with pause, with listening, with sincerity. Life is always trying to show you where the disconnection is. And it does this through your internal experience. You feel when something does not vibrate with your truth. Your body gives you signals. Your breathing changes. Your intuition speaks. But out of fear of stopping, you keep going. Out of attachment to the known, you insist. Because you do not want to disappoint, you adapt. And so you move away from yourself, a little each day, one small abandonment at a time, until the misalignment becomes routine and the soul begins to get sick. Napoleon Hill talked about a defined purpose, and purpose is not just a goal, it is a frequency. When you are on purpose, you feel vitality, you feel clarity, you feel expansion. When you're off purpose, everything weighs down, everything drains. Everything requires too much effort, and this constant effort is not a sign of overcoming. It is a sign of disconnection, that perhaps you are trying to manifest something that is no longer in tune with your soul. Recognizing the signs is not about judging yourself. It is about loving yourself. It is about allowing yourself to recalibrate. It is about understanding that true manifestation begins with internal alignment, with the decision to listen to yourself, to respect what your body feels, what your intuition points out, what your heart silently asks for. When you start vibrating your truth again, even without knowing how the external world will respond, the field begins to reorganize itself. And what seemed confusing begins to make sense, because the inner truth always finds its way again, even if it needs to gently call you through discomfort first. To return to the main question, why does almost no one live what Napoleon Hill taught? The answer lies in the absence of coherent vibration. Hill emphasized the importance of a defined purpose, sustained by a burning desire. However, many read his words but do not internalize them. Most do not transform desire into consistent vibrational action. They wish but do not decide. They dream but do not vibrate. And without vibration, there is no manifestation. The hard truth is that it is not enough to wish. You need to align your thoughts, emotions, and actions. You need to live in coherence with what you want. As Hill stated, a definite purpose, sustained by a burning desire, is the starting point of all achievements. But this purpose must be lived, felt, and vibrated daily. Harvecker complements this idea by saying, "The millionaire mind is not what you do, it is who you become energetically." This means that transformation begins from the inside out. It is not about accumulating knowledge, but about incorporating a new vibrational identity. It is about becoming the person who already lives the desired reality, even before it manifests externally. Transformation does not begin when you learn something new, but when you stop vibrating like the version that is still sabotaging itself. It is in this moment of awareness that real change happens. It is when you decide, firmly and clearly, to align yourself with your deepest truth. It is when you choose to vibrate in harmony with your most authentic desires. Stop looking for secrets. Start observing your vibration in small decisions. It is in them that the power to transform your reality resides. It is in them that you find the key to truly living the teachings of Napoleon Hill, because we live in a world that values knowledge but despises feeling, a world where the mind is exalted but the body is ignored, where knowledge accumulates but rarely becomes incarnate. Napoleon Hill did not just write a manual on how to get rich. He wrote a work on how to transform yourself, how to align desire, thought, and emotion in a single vibrational direction. But this requires courage, not the courage to fight the world, but the courage to dive into yourself and let die everything that prevents the new from being born. The truth is that it is not enough to wish. You have to vibrate, act, repeat, feel, sustain, become. It is not a quick journey. It is not a road without curves, but it is a path that, when followed with sincerity, transforms the being. Because what Hill called definite purpose is not just a goal, it's a vibration that becomes identity. It's a choice that becomes presence. It's a new self that is born and never goes back to sleep. Harv Eker was spot on when he said, "The millionaire mind is not what you do, it's who you become energetically." Because it all starts with energy. It all starts with how you see yourself, with how you vibrate, with how you respond to life when it doesn't yet give you what you asked for. That's where identity is shaped. That's where the field is built. That's where manifestation begins to come closer, even when everything still feels the same. True transformation doesn't begin when you learn something new. It begins when you stop vibrating like the version of yourself that still doubts, that still procrastinates, that still sabotages itself. It is at that point, at that moment, when you choose with total presence, that the universe responds. Because it doesn't react to your haste, it responds to your coherence. And coherence is born from silence, from decision, from surrender. Stop looking for secrets. Stop accumulating formulas. Start observing your vibration in the small decisions, in the way you wake up, in the tone with which you speak, in the energy you put into your gestures. Because it is there, in the subtlety of everyday life, that manifestation takes shape. It is there that the invisible begins to become visible. It is there that reality changes, not from the outside in, but from the inside out, as it has always been, as Napoleon Hill always knew, and as you're now beginning to feel.